Elevation. Big blunts, dope boys wanna smoke with me. Now we ride double M's through the whole city. Niggas talking down, but they always feel me. A 9-figure nigga, all I wanna talk is business. I seen a big mouth get a closed casket. Self-made, took over the whole racket. A kilo after kilo, see who moved the most. 200 for
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Goofy Investing, where we talk about investing in the stock market. This is the underground, small channel, huge value. All right, we're going to be taking a look at a popular stock here that recently IPO'd. And I assess perhaps maybe a misunderstood IPO. I know the context of this channel is small and mid-cap companies, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's rules against me posting analysis on bigger companies, okay? At least on valuation metrics, all right? So ticker is SPCX, Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, also known as SpaceX, the Elon Musk company, all right? Trades on the NASDAQ, $160.95 a share. Market cap is $2.11 trillion. In the after hours, we're looking at gain of 3.66% up in the after hours at $166.84 a share. All right, what do they do? Where are they headquartered? All right. So, company was founded in 2002. They're headquartered in Texas, Starbase, One Rocket Road Starbase. So, how do you look at that? That's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, with this actual business model of launching rockets, they kind of have to be in the middle of nowhere. I assess is probably more, on the southern portion of Texas where there's a lot more land mass and so forth. All right. And, their sector is communication services and their industry is alternative carriers. Now, what are they really? Okay, well, they're a satellite internet broadband company right now, but with a huge vision. All right, we're going to talk about that vision in their business model in this stock analysis. But in keeping with traditions, we're going to do a valuation sniff check. Okay, 30.6 billion in debt, 23.68 billion in cash. 7.05 billion in other assets. That gives them an enterprise value of near break even of 2.12 trillion. All right, let's look at how many sales they got right now. 19.3 billion in sales, gross profits at 9.4 billion. So with that actual margin setup, we'll take a look at it. 48.83% gross margin, net income margins negative 45%. Consensus estimates got them growing dramatically, though. You're looking at over 100% annualized projected growth for this year from last year. 86.86% growth, and then growth for the eye can see in double digits. All right. 2035, 9-10 years out, they're projected to do 794 billion. Okay. Those are some pretty wild swings on growth trajectories out a decade. All right. And typically in my experience, when you get a fresh IPO, consensus analyst estimates don't go out 10 years a lot of the time. All right. Let's talk about the way that this company IPO'd and the whole idea behind it. All right. So I assess that the IPO was appropriate as averse to alternative sources via a SPAC. If the company is trying to raise this much amount of money and get in trillion-dollar valuation territory, raising 60 billion, 70 billion, whatever, you're not going to be able to accomplish that via SPAC, guys. All right, you need institutional involvement for this type of investment proposition set up to sell on the public market. So I assess they did this, the right way, and that's best for their internal investors and the raising of capital and so forth. All right. So we got that out of the way. All right. Let's talk about what they're trying to do, what they've done, and so forth. All right. So they have built recyclable rockets that can be used multi-purpose use, and they're building a fleet of these recyclable rockets that are not just limited to a one-time use. They've been able to streamline and cut the cost of these rockets down via what they call the algorithm. And essentially, what this is make the requirements less dumb. To sum this all up, though, it's reverse engineering. Okay, is pretty much what they did. So if you see on the left here, this is what a rocket looked like, and then through their process on the right to where it has number one, it says, that's more of a simple model. Okay, so less things that break, less risk requirement against rocket science and impact to performance of success. All right, so they're doing it the right way. All right, it's working. All right, and for that, they're going to accumulate better gross margins for it. I like the Brett Johnson guy. I've looked at the investment relations video that they have on their website. And of course, Elon Musk, a business mogul with a huge, radical vision to colonize Mars and so forth. So, what is the idea of this company? Okay. So, their idea is these sales, or actually to go back to it, these sales of 19 billion, all right, our majority of that is broadband internet via satellite services. So they have launched these rockets into space and have launched these satellites to do global, global circulating to provide internet broadband service via satellites. And I'm tracking they got about 10,000 satellites up there, so they're doing it to scale, and they're the only ones that are operating to scale in this segment. All right. So that's something to consider. So the proof of concept for that actual business model has been established and proven out via they got sales. And from what I understand, they raised $9 billion, and they were founded in, bear with me, 2002 with 22,000 employees. So you got a company here that has 22,000 employees, and 24 years later they've demonstrated proof of concept that nobody has ever been able to accomplish. And with 9 billion of raised capital, they've pretty much been able to achieve 19 billion in sales. This is exceptional performance and value creation, I assess. I don't, it's hard to, I haven't seen numbers of raised capital to bear fruit to these type of numbers and accomplishments. And they've been able to do this due to technological innovation, the relanding of rockets and so forth. It's crazy, all right? So there's that. So they're using this sales mode, which the majority of the portion of these consensus estimate projections are going to base, on the internet broadband satellite services. A majority is where these sales are going to come from. But additionally, the market is pricing in the visionary success of unproven market yet to come. All right, and what is that? So their intent is they're going to create um, a space center on the moon where they will build a space center there that will launch AI data centers, satellite formats into space using a magnetic rail against gravitational propulsion in the favor of these launches in the manufacture of these space data centers that are fueled by solar, encapsulating the energy from the sun with solar panels attached to these space data centers, satellites. Okay. Now, how are they going to accomplish this? Well, they're going to use robots on the moon to build more robots, build out the actual space station, and build the data centers and the rail and the launch thereof. Okay, that's going to take a lot of time and money and effort. All right, so I think it's the only way to do it, to tell you the truth. There may be another way, but this is probably the better way to do it. So I assess that this capital raise is necessary to achieve a vision such as this operational business model and infrastructure build out. You're going to need. This isn't going to be. This can't be a. I'm going to SPAC raise $5 billion and that's it. No, they needed to get a huge amount of sum of capital to pour gasoline on the fire to operational execution capabilities to accomplish this. And I think this is just the beginning. I think they might need to raise 500 billion to a trillion, over the span of decades to accomplish these type of operational objectives. Okay. So let's talk about their target total addressable market. All right. So SpaceX is proposing to investors that their total addressable target market is 28.5 trillion. All right. Sounds crazy, but let's look at some other factors, okay? Let's look at this. Let's look at US real GDP for the US. So real GDP for the United States is 24.15 trillion, okay? And then let's look at or actually I'll put this up on another tab. Let's look at GDP, real GDP for the world. All right, you're looking at 126.3 trillion, and real GDP is hovering around 110 to 111 trillion. Okay, so if I take out my handy dandy calculator and I let's just say I give credit towards nominal GDP. Okay, and then or let's go back here. All right, if they're targeting 28.5 trillion GDP, bear with me. And then I I I compartmentalize the world's GDP at 126 trillion. We'll just make it a rounding error. It's about 22% of the world's GDP on their total addressable market. Why does this matter? Okay, why am I looking at GDP? Because the end point of every investment and business model comes back down to the consumer. I don't care what the business model is, if it's a B2B, if they're operating on Mars or Saturn, I don't care. It's going to come back down to the consumer on the world. All right. So 22% of global GDP against, their total addressable market, all right? You know, I can I can see it, all right? With the impact to society and the disruption, to become a utility of internet and data center capabilities and so forth. I can see it with the growing of GDP around global GDP of around 2 to 3% on their actual runway. I can buy it. All right. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to buy it at this valuation of a 2 trillion valuation though. Okay. But I want to compartmentalize this and do some brainstorming. Okay. So the business model is space, okay? The final frontier. If the business model is space and the infrastructure build out of that, we're just talking about what we just talked about is global GDP. Now we have to look at intergalactical GDP, which is not established yet. And I'm trying to see, did they undershoot their total addressable market or did they overshoot their total addressable market? All right. So I think they did a good responsible thing, and maybe the market makers and so forth, to what the market can bear. I think I can see 28.5 trillion. Okay. Now, I believe that there is an untapped intergalactical GDP and universal GDP that is not established yet, which would add to this total addressable market. All right. What that number will be, I don't know. Is it 100 trillion? Is it 50 more trillion? I don't know. Okay. And I think that with their space exploration objectives of colonization of Mars and different planets and stars, I believe that there is a chance that they will that they will encounter extraterritorial aliens, if you will. All right, non-human life. With the interaction of aliens, coming into play, could there be a possibility of communications of trade and commerce establishment with aliens? Okay, could there be a situation where these data centers may play a role in communications in the embeddedment of an alien race to use as a service? And could trade commerce be established to make or create the intergalactical GDP as on top of the world GDP that we thought of? I think it's possible. Do I think it's likely? I don't know. There's a possibility, a strong possibility that this could happen. Now, could this happen in our lifetimes? I don't know. Okay. So that's yet to be seen. So that's an interesting proposition that you don't get around the corner with a lot of companies. So now I'm thinking, okay, if this is a $2 trillion company, if the total addressable market can be raised in 10 years to 50, 100 trillion, okay, is this really a mega cap company? Or is this really a small cap, small to mid cap company with the proposition? Okay. So these are things I'm thinking about. All right. Um, Now, here's the thing. All right. There has to be balance with the ideology of your assessment as an investor. So just because I assess there's a delta, a difference between what everybody in the market and all these other investors think, doesn't necessarily mean that, the market can bear that. All right. So, what do I mean by that? All right. Well, just because I believe this is a small to mid and this may have the potential to be a quadrillion market cap company in 30 years, 40 years, whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be able to garner a price to sales multiple. If the that doesn't mean that the market will be able to bear that type of price to sales multiple projection on this company. All right. So could the market bear 100 trillion market cap based on on a price to sales multiple of them doing 800 billion by 2035? I don't assess it to be true. So I don't think that the market can bear it. So what does this really come down to? All right. Well, I'll tell you what it's going to come down to. If the investor can't garner price to sales multiple premium, and the market can't bear it, the thesis is going to come down. How am I going to override the thesis? It's going to come down to pure GAAP profitability, bottom line EPS. It's the only way to do it, baby. It's the only way to do it. So I'll go back to their investor deck. All right. And we'll look at their margin projection. They're targeting 70% gross margin and GAAP net income margin of 45%. So now I got to think as an investor, would I rather pay $1 billion valuation for a company that's going to do a trillion in sales, or would I rather pay $2 billion valuation on a company that can do 2 trillion in sales, or would I rather pay 2 trillion valuation that a company that can only do 2 billion in net income? So you have to look at that as a measure. There's always got to be balance to it. All right. So what do I assess as I digress on this analysis on the investment proposition? Um, can the market hold premium on this equity for 2 trillion? I think it can for a while. If you're shorting this, time is against you. This market can hold premium on a 2 trillion market cap for years. But I do believe eventually there will be correction, and upon that correction, I think that it's going to come down to the hurdle of total addressable market on their pioneering stance on their business model. What do I mean by that? I think that once they hit somewhere in these hundreds of billions of dollars, they may come across a challenge to continue expanding sales and penetration of a TAM that's not established yet. Where is that? Is that in the 400 billion or 700 billion dollar arena? I don't know. But and of course market sentiment on their price to sales multiple can also correct as well. So, what do I project with the stock price action? I think stock is, sometime between the next few years, stock will correct and you're going to be looking at a 500, 300 billion valuation, maybe a loss of 75% market cap from these valuations. That doesn't necessarily mean that's bad, well, I mean it is a bad deal if you're buying it right now, not investment advice, but just my humble opinion, all right? So, and then the actual tailwind of the timeline of execution to the investment proposition to the investor, what am I thinking about that? Well, I think that it's going to take maybe 20, 30, 20 to 40 years to accomplish all these objectives. The build out of the space station, all the data center satellite launches, and so forth, the establishment of sales, margin expansion, and so forth. So I'm in my late 30s, so this may not be appropriate for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not appropriate for maybe say my offspring. All right, so this may be more applicable of an investment for someone who's younger, 18 years old, maybe they're still in high school or middle school and so forth, all right? And I think that windows of opportunity will come in. Just because I'm bought into the actual vision and story doesn't necessarily mean I have to buy it at this price, okay? So, I think it's a good long-term investment, but a mega long-term investment, 30, 40 years. But I think that the actual valuation versus the proof of concept of what's not been proven is already priced in. So, you know, with that being said, I'm probably passing on this valuation right here, and maybe I'm buying this at a 500 billion. Maybe if I want to be generous, I can give them a trillion valuation. Maybe it gets cut in half, $80 or whatever, $70 or whatever, and then maybe that's the entry point. All right. So that's what I got. If you got value out of this video, check out my Patreon. Get access to my coveted hidden, my deep dive collection, as well as my hidden gem collection. Get more direct access to me. Join a community of like-minded investors that are for all extensive purposes. They're becoming high caliber investors on there. I got investors on there becoming millionaires, making obscene amounts of money. 14, 15 bucks a month. You really can't beat it. If it's too much, click this button up here, pay annually, and save 20%. All I ask is you like this video and check out the Patreon. What do you got to lose? All right. With that being said, I thank all of y'all for your support. I love y'all, and take it easy.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
One thing to question your mind, it's another to question your eyes and ears.
Remember how you felt when you were alone? You were miserable. That's why we're here.
You're not gonna do it, are you? Change the world. You're afraid.